VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker, and today is the start of training camp edition for these Minnesota Vikings, the team that's supposed to win about 7 games in 2024. That's what they won last year. We shall see if they're different. But here's the deal. We were hanging out as Vikings fans saying, hey, it's pretty sweet. All of the veterans have shown up today. There was even 18 veterans that showed up a day early. The rookies were there on Sunday. So out of just hanging out, just experiencing the vibe of summer camp, and then boom, all of a sudden, 2 bombshells dropped into the Vikings news cycle. One of them, mammoth, and the other one, probably a move that should have happened last year, but here we are. So I want to unpack those 2 bombshells. We're going to start at the very top. Christian Darrisaw is back for 4 years and $113 million. That deal is now the largest for an offensive tackle in football, at least for what the deal can be worth up to, $113 million. And it's the most surprising part about it is I don't know anybody that thought this deal would get done this summer. This would even be a little bit early for a franchise quarterback. It's fantastic, don't get me wrong. But this guy, for example, was really wrong because I thought this would play out into next spring and then probably early summer like Jefferson. But no bones. The Vikings said, no, thank you. We're not doing that. We're going to make Darrisaw the most handsome paid offensive tackle and nail down this spot for the long haul. I think it's noteworthy because we won't have any procrastination from this front office on this one. There's a lot of Vikings fans who I think feel undue anxiety because this leadership regime likes to go down to the wire on its contract extensions, a la Justin Jefferson, a la J.J. McCarthy here a couple days ago. And it seems like they either got the memo or Darrisaw's people were significantly easier to deal with. Because truth be told, this should have hit the topic of real conversation, not just smoke that, hey, the guy needs a deal. This should have been on the radar next January, February, March, a lot like Jefferson. But this go around, they said, nope, we're not procrastinating. We're going to go ahead and lock this down. And it's kind of sweet because it probably saves the Vikings some money in the long run. I don't have in front of me, nor did I look it up for the show, who will be next because I don't care about them. I care about Christian Darrisaw. But there's probably an offensive tackle, Rashawn Slater comes to mind, who's in the pipeline that will bleed this into 2025. And good for that guy because then he'll probably top Darrisaw's deal. But this is why there is a lot of fans that wanted Jefferson's deal to get done last summer because the Vikings could have saved however many million it would have been. Probably, even though Jefferson got hurt and missed the 7 games, he probably would have checked in last year around $30 million would be my guess. So $35 million per, Jefferson certainly maximized his value, and I expected that Darrisaw would do the same. But the other really sweet part about this Darrisaw deal is a lot of times when we size up contract extensions, we forget that the rookie deal is still ongoing. So not only is Darrisaw extended by 4 years, it's 4 years on top of the 2 he already has left. So right now, as it's scheduled, Darrisaw is the last man standing per Vikings contracts. If I'm not mistaken, there's no other dude that is signed in 2029. Even the rookies like J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner, their 5-year extension would kick in 2028. Let's assume they're both exercised those 5th-year options. Or let's say I should hope. But Darrisaw is going to be the ultimate Viking because no other guy is scheduled to be around as long as him. So he's going to be ingrained in the fabric of Vikings culture if he's not already. Another big fallout item of this is pretty sweet. There are no large mysteries afoot now for the Vikings when it comes to contracts or really anything else. Of course, figuring out if J.J. McCarthy is good. We think Dallas Turner will be productive. Cameron Bynum will probably get a contract extension, but that'll pale in comparison to Jefferson's or Darrisaw. But we don't have any more summer cliffhangers. Usually at this time on the calendar, we're waiting for a Dalvin Cook trade or release, or Danielle Hunter is not going to show up, or TJ Hawkinson has an ear infection and thus is holding out. We don't have any of those. We have our scandals with Jordan Addison, don't get me wrong, and then not a scandal, but the unfortunate passing of Kyrie Jackson. So there was melancholy on the Vikings calendar in the last 3 weeks. But it was kind of, not the Kyrie Jackson, but the Addison stuff kind of feels wiped away by this enthusiasm over Darrisaw and then everybody being back at training camp. So the mystery of the summer, which probably wasn't scheduled to be resolved with Darrisaw until next year, it's over. So the only thing we have left to see is, hey, do they go sign a Hunter Renfrow or trade for another wide receiver? Does Bynum get his deal done? It's little stuff in the grand schemes of long-term planning. This Darrisaw move offers utter stability for the Vikings offensive line. Brian O'Neill isn't that old either. What is he, 20, 27, 28? So for the foreseeable future, let's hope Kevin O'Connell remains the head coach. The Vikings have the hard part figured out with the two tackles, and then we'll see what happens in the middle of the line. But the hard part is finding the foundational left tackle, and bada bing, the Vikings have that guy in Darrisaw for the next 6 years. So I know that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah wanted to extend Jefferson last year, and even right before week 1, they thought they had a deal done. So it's not that they forgot or they were negligent, but it's really cool that some lessons seem to be learned, that the player can earn his respect a year in advance, and by the way, you can save whatever the variance between next year's big offensive tackle signing, whatever that guy's going to make right now, you save a little bit of money by getting it done beforehand. So Darrisaw back is an absolute treasure, and I think every single Vikings fan that I know is like, sweet, I'm glad they got this one done. What an offseason. So that's Darrisaw. Next, did not see this one coming either. I don't know which one was more surprising in like the 8 minutes that both these stories broke. But Duke Shelley, the folkloric hero, is back for the Vikings. He joins a Vikings cornerback depth chart that's about 10 players deep. But this one was really sweet for the vibes of the 2024 team because fans adored Duke in 2022. And this move should have been made last year. You might recall during free agency, it was such an affordable and we thought no-brainer signing to bring back Duke Shelley, who ranked 4th per PFF in 2022 among all cornerbacks, not just reclamation journeyman. Every single cornerback in the league, Shelley ranked 4th per PFF in 2022. And then when Brian Flores showed up, it seemed that the Vikings just had no interest in him whatsoever. He went to the Raiders before an unfortunate roster cut, and then ended up with the Rams, where he played 76 defensive snaps, which wasn't much. So at least for a summer look, as part of formulating the cornerback spot on the depth chart, Duke Shelley's back. Another byproduct, result of this is it probably dampens any enthusiasm for folks that wanted to see Stephon Gilmore or Xavier Howard. Those two cornerbacks are free agents, and they both have ties to Brian Flores, one from the Patriots days and Gilmore, and then Xavier Howard from Flores' Dolphins days. Those guys are more career-long, proficient cornerbacks than Duke Shelley, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that, hey, one of those guys could be signed tomorrow. But now that you have 10 or 11 cornerbacks with Shelley, who we think they value, I don't think we'll see Stephon Gilmore, and that's who I hoped they would have signed if they were going to sign anybody, but I will not bitch about Duke Shelley back in the house. It also puts a cornerback CB roster spot in jeopardy. One of the, morbid items that came out of Kyrie Jackson's passing was somebody's job probably got safer, and Andrew Booth felt like the nominee there. But now, with Shelley back in the fold, if he looks like he did in 2022, which might be a little bit of an assumption and long shot because he didn't play great last year, nor did he play much. If he's good and he's the 2022 version of himself, that means somebody isn't going to make a roster spot if Shelley, makes it. And that puts, Booth on the roster bubble, Evans maybe if he's up to his benching antics that he encountered last year. So what we thought for a couple of weeks that Andrew Booth's job security might have been increased because of the tragic event in Maryland, I don't know. Duke Shelley, if he's got the juice to make the roster, somebody has to be the odd man out, especially because the Vikings like to keep so many safeties on their roster. You can only have so many defensive backs on a 53-man roster. So again, I will pump the brakes on Shelley a little bit for expectation. I don't think the Raiders or the Rams fundamentally understood him, and they therefore sabotaged themselves by not playing him or even employing him for the Raiders' sake. So if he shows up to training camp in the preseason and looks mid or doesn't look like 2022, that might just been his one like Superman season where he stood out and then came back to earth. So I want to get that out there. That's a possibility. I don't think last year's Shelley's employers just got it wrong, but we will hope for the best because Duke Shelley is Duke Shelley, a folklore hero for these Vikings. Let's see. I think that about covers it on the analysis of Shelley. I will tell you that I was fundamentally shocked by both of these because Darrisaw to me felt like a next March and April talker, and then Shelley I didn't even think was an option because he was essentially discarded by two teams last year. But they are back in the mix. I'm sure during our question and answer segment tomorrow, we'll talk more about this with Yannick Eckhart of Purple PTSD and Tyler Ireland, our producer. But those are the bombshells. Darrisaw is re-signed for a grand total of 6 years. He will be attached to Vikings football through the end of 2029, if you can believe it. And lo and behold, after oodles of requests during free agency of 2023, the Vikings signed Duke Shelley back, and he's in the house. That's all I got for you, and skol, baby.